Ireland against Samoa this weekend, folks. Rugby World Cup warm-up. We are not far away from the Rugby World Cup at all, but some of the teams are still very much getting themselves out of first gear to get themselves really kind of match fit and shake off a bit of that rust coming in the off-season. I'm mostly looking at the Northern Hemisphere sides. The Irish got one more crack at it against Samoa. Samoa coming across after kind of a middling campaign in their Pacific Nations Cup. But we'll go through the lineups, some prediction stats, some recent history, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. I say recent history, it's not that recent. The most recent game, I believe, between these two sides is Rugby World Cup last time, 2019, where Ireland gave them a bit of a hiding, 47 points to 5. And most of the games, the other four, all go back kind of a decade or longer. They've all been pretty comfortable wins for the Irish. Like there's a 10-pointer there in 2010, but all the others going back to 2001 are like 40 points to 14 or 40 points to 9, that kind of thing. So Ireland, over the last kind of 30 years, have had Samoa's number. But Samoa has beaten Ireland before, but not since 1996. So it's been a long time between drinks. And with Ireland number one in the world against a 12th ranked Samoan side, you can bet your bottom dollar the Samoans are big time underdogs for this one, even though it is at a neutral venue over in France. I like the French kickoff times, but anyway, that's just me being here in New Zealand liking to watch some rugby with my breakfast. For the Samoans, they have made a few changes from the side who played the Barbars last week. Remember, their campaign has started with that Pacific Nations Cup and then continued with that Barbars game where they won pretty comfortably against the Barbars. James Lay, Salila Lam, and Paul Alo-Emile is the front row. So Alo-Emile, who is co-captain, and Irish fans will be very familiar with from his time at Leinster, he's on the bench for this one, but I would say come World Cup time, he'll probably be starting, although Alo-Emile was captain of the Samoan side during the Pacific Nations Cup for at least one or two of the games. So he's kind of a even split with Alo-Emile in terms of, I think, where he's at in the squad. Chris Vui is co-captain, so he's the starting captain with Alo-Emile on the bench. And then the kind of athletic, I want to say freak, but you know what I mean in the best kind of way, Theo McFarland is there starting at lock. He's had a couple of games from the bench, so it's good to see him finally starting. I feel like he needs to start at the World Cup because that man is a talent. Tilani Siu, big ball carrier at 6, Fritz Lee and Steve Luatua at 7 and 8. Luatua switches from the blind side to number 8 for this one. Maybe doesn't have the most dynamic ball carrying game like he used to, but he gets through a lot of tackles and certainly a good liner option. Taumateni and Sopoaga, that's your 9-10 combo, so former All Black in Sopoaga. I think this is his second game for Samoa. He missed out on the Pacific Nations Cup campaign, but did play against the Barbars, so hopefully he's kind of gotten in rhythm, but it seems like it's a big thing to go from not ever playing with this team ever to about to potentially have the number 10 jersey on for a Rugby World Cup and only have 2 games in the bag in that position. But we'll see how he goes with Taumateni there. Tamua Manu and UJ Saltini, those are your midfield guys. Tamua Manu played on the wing a bit in the Pacific Nations Cup and maybe more familiar for me anyway, seeing him playing in the midfield. Certainly been dangerous on the ball carry. And then Saltini, you'll know him from his games at La Rochelle. That guy means business. Ed Fido, the big busting ball carrier on the right wing. And Nigel R. Wong switches wings to go left. And Paia'aua, I don't know if I've seen Duncan Paia'aua play at 15 before. I'm more used to seeing him play in the midfield. But I know he kind of trained when he was at the Reds as like also a 10-12. So I'm assuming his kicking game is going to be up to scratch. Might be interesting to see if the Irish decide to test him under the high ball or not. Malolo, who is a dynamic ball carrier in terms of being able to bust over from close range, is your replacement hooker. Jordan Lay is on the bench alongside Alo-Emile, like I mentioned. Miracle Fai'ilagi, who has been tearing it up for Moana Pacifica here in Super Rugby, is on the bench as well. Jordan Taufua, speaking of really high work rate guys, that guy was in the All Black squad a couple of times, never quite got capped. Is there on the bench as well. Inari, Leali'ifano, and Foma'i are the 3 back. Played more of the game time in the Pacific Nations Cup. Helped Samoa get a win over Japan with his accurate goal kicking, but he's been a little bit of a scattergun guy, whereas one day he'll be phenomenal and the next day not so much with the goal kicking. So I think he is behind Sopoaga in the pecking order, despite the fact that Sopoaga is only in his second game for Samoa. Ireland have made a bunch of changes. Some of the first string guys who played last week are now on the bench or out of the 23. And it's maybe one last chance for some of these guys to impress as Andy Farrell has to narrow the squad down to 33 guys. Dan Sheehan's picked up an injury, but they reckon he's going to be fit for the World Cup. So fingers crossed that is true. Not that he's got an injury, but fingers crossed that he's back for the World Cup. Cian, Healy, Tom Stewart, and Finlay Bealham. That's an all-new front row. So good on Tom Stewart for getting a start. Although part of that is probably the fact that Kelleher and Cian are not yet fit or not currently fit. But yeah, I look forward to see how these guys go against the Samoan scrum. Iain, Henderson, Tadhg, Byrne, that's your lock-in duo. So Henderson captains the side. He's into the 23. And how much game time has he had recently? I feel like it's not that much. But Tadhg Byrne played last week and got like 16 out of 18 tackles, which is in itself unremarkable because we're just used to that from Tadhg Byrne. But yeah, the guy is a tackling and turnover machine. Ryan Baird, good chance for him to impress as well as he plays on the blind side. His versatility may be in his favour as I said, Andy Farrell narrows things down. In fact, he can carry a lock and loose forward. And then Van der Flier and Caelan Doris, you feel like those guys are going to be 7 and 8 for the World Cup. And that's where they line up in this one. Conor Murray, Jack Crowley, 9-10. I'm keen to see how Crowley goes because Ross Byrne's goal kicking was pretty poor last week. But he did set up a couple of tries with some nice wide passes. Just doesn't have much of a running game, does Ross Byrne. I still like him. Maybe stupidly so, but yeah, he can be a little bit predictable in that he's pretty much always gonna shift it. But he's got a knack for picking the right option. But I know he's not loved by every Irish fan. One guy I do love watching is Stuart McCloskey. He's in at 12, the big block-busting ball carrier. Seeing him up against Tumua Manu should be one to watch. Robbie Henshaw is there at 13, comes into the 23. Mack Hansen still on the right wing, got a try and a try assist last week, was pretty sharp. And Keith Earls got that 100th cap and 100th try last week, was phenomenal to see. So good to see him get a start, bit of a blast from the past. And then Jimmy O'Brien comes in for Keenan at fullback. Jimmy O'Brien's versatility, I think, is also putting him in good stead, even if Keenan has pretty much got a lock on the 15 jersey. Herring, Loughman and O'Toole are your front row replacements. James Ryan's down to the bench. Peter O'Mahony's down to the bench. Craig Casey's in with no Gibson Park. Ross Byrne and Gary Ringrose also down to the bench. Stats-wise, Ireland are going to look to dominate possession. They're going to want to pass that high-tempo game to keep the Samoan defenders guessing. They're not going to want to let the Samoan defence get set. Ireland are scoring a lot of tries in the final 20, but weirdly, they're also a big first half team as well, so they're relentless. What can I say? I mentioned the goal kicking wasn't that sharp last week, so Jack Crowley having a good day with the boot could make things interesting as Andy Farrell selects his squad. Samoa last week against the Barbars didn't have any match stats, but they didn't just go and play helter-skelter, try to play for tries. They scored 3 tries and they scored 3 penalties. So I think they're already in kind of test match mode. For them, that was a genuine kind of chance to get lined up for the World Cup. Predictions-wise, Ireland are big-time favourites, man. Big-time favourites. 25 points with the bookies and 30 points with the Rugby Forecast algorithm. The average score across the last 5 games is 36-9. So it's kind of in line with that, despite the fact that those results are pretty historic. Yeah, it is on at France at Bayonne. It's 9 o'clock kickoff, which I mentioned I like because that's like 7 a.m. here in New Zealand, so kind of perfect timing. England's Wayne Barnes is the ref. I expect to see a fair few Irish fans there in attendance because I know the Irish fans tend to travel pretty well. If you want to get yourself some rugby gear, check out Lovell Rugby. They have a bunch of rugby gear. Chile, Argentina, England, France, all the rugby teams that you might want to buy supporters gear for. Check out link in the description for Lovell. They're an affiliate of the channel. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts, how this one is going to go. And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.